friends, to Drive Mode Show. I'm James Gilboy, and today we're going to talk about the Toyota 86. So this is going to make Aaron feel pretty old, but I was in high school when this thing came out, and I vividly remember being hyped beyond belief that there was a spiritual successor to the hero car of Initial D, one of those shows that actually got me into cars. And 8 years later, just a couple months before Toyota puts the kibosh on this, the first gen model, I'm finally getting to drive one. Specifically, I'm getting to drive a 2020 86 Hakone Edition. Now they say never to meet your heroes, but after reading 8 years of reviews for these things, I sort of knew what to expect. Really sharp handling, God is it ever, terrible back seats. My friends didn't like being forced to sit back there, and an engine less fluent in torque than I am in Polish. I only know a couple swear words. But this is all stuff you've heard before, because again, this is the end of the 86's life, not its beginning. That's why instead of doing a video review this month, go read my thoughts on this gorgeous green machine over at Car News Cafe. The link will be in the description, by the way. We're gonna do something a little bit more forward-looking. Let's talk about the next gen car. Specifically, let's go and list 10 things that Toyota can do to really ace it, to make it just perfect. Now, before I dive into the list, let me preface it by saying half of these are serious and half of these are kind of silly suggestions, wish listy kind of things, which some of them I think Toyota should consider if it hasn't already, but not all of them are something I expect a real car company to do in now, what's the 2020s. But, you know, some of them are things that 90s kids and nostalgic zoomers or revivalists, whatever you want to call them, would still like. And actually, let's start with one of those silly throwback ones. Number one, pop-up headlights. So, I don't know if you know this, but the 86 is actually a tribute to the last rear-wheel drive Corolla, the Corolla GTS, which was best known for having them pop-ups. Now, there's a good reason why they're gone. They're mechanically complex, they add aerodynamic drag when they're up, and it's almost impossible to make them work with modern pedestrian crash safety laws. I mean, but clearly, pedestrians are kind of going to be more worried about trucks, SUVs, crossovers than they are about sports cars. And well, if the Ares Panther, that supercar based on I think the Lamborghini Huracan, can bring them back, why can't Toyota? Number two, this is another funny one, but it's actually kind of serious. Now hear me out. A shooting brake, like those old BMW Z3 clown shoes. Not only is it another throwback to that Corolla GTS, which also had a liftback, but it would also give it extra trunk space that it could desperately use. That would also maybe make it compete with cars like the VW Golf GTI. A bit of extra interior space also wouldn't hurt when it comes to number three, those back seats. They're barely large enough for an average-sized American adult. Never mind my 6'2" friend Zach, who had to ride a Shake Shack behind our mutual friend Rafi. There'll be a photo I'll share there. Neither of them were really comfortable. But, you know, they might have been if, number five, there had been a sunroof to give them a little bit more airflow, because it can't get hot in this car. I mean, the HVAC's good, but, I mean, I get that would also disrupt the lines a little bit and raise the center of gravity some, add some weight. But surely Toyota could have sold a few more of these things if they added it as an option, you know? Actually, speaking of options, let's have another maybe kind of silly one. Number six, ITBs, or independent throttle bodies. Now, if you don't know what these are, I highly recommend you go onto YouTube, look up a video of a car called the Alfa Romeo 155 V6 Ti. Give that car a listen. That unbelievable noise its engine makes is in part because there's a throttle for each individual cylinder. It roughs up the induction noise, and it can turn pretty much any engine into one of the best sounding on the planet. It'll give a little engine like this, 4 cylinders, a beautiful little growl. So even if a car like this ends up not being fast. If it's got ITBs, it'll just be a ton of fun to rev out. And that would be a huge improvement if Toyota doesn't address wish list item number 7, a more powerful engine. That's a second gear pull. And you know what? I'm driving this thing at high altitude. It's so far down on torque that I can't really help but agree with those power snobs. It's just so lacking in grunt below 2,500 RPM that yesterday, while driving in traffic, I had to give it a small ringing to keep up with a 2000s Honda Accord V6 that wasn't even being driven that hard. Now, fortunately, all the rumors point to me getting my wish here. Everybody's saying the next car is going to get a 2.4 liter engine instead of this one's 2 liter. Whether it's going to stay turbo or NA, nobody can really agree, but one thing's for sure, the extra displacement won't hurt anything but maybe gas mileage. And I have a suggestion for that too. Number 8, how many fingers am I holding up? Longer gears. I know short gearing is kind of Toyota's thing with sports cars. It's a big issue with my MR2 Turbo, which does about 3,000 RPM at 65, 60 miles an hour. This thing, you're tempted to throw it in 5th at 35, and at 75, you're spinning 3,500. Granted, the engine is actually at home in its power band there, and it can get solid mileage, but with an updated engine, we'll probably need some improvements to the gearing too. So, no clever segue this time, but number 9, let's have some two-tone paint jobs. Toyota, you're already doing it on the Camry TRD. It's in vogue with those nostalgic millennials and, you know, the 80s revivalist Zoomers I already talked about. And again, it'd be a throwback to that Corolla GTS. Everybody's favorite depiction of it was in that panda black on white scheme. And actually, the last thing the 86 needs, the next 86, on top of all these, is actually the biggest thing of all, a real performance powertrain option. Toyota sports cars have historically, almost without exception, you know, MR2 Spider notwithstanding, offered a base model powertrain and then something with a little bit more oomph. It was true on the Celica, it was true on the MR2, and now that there's a 4-cylinder Supra back, well, not back, available, it's true of Toyota's flagship again. And speaking of that 4-cylinder Supra, that car starts at 44 grand. That's gonna leave a huge gap to the 86, which is around 30 these days. Toyota hinted for quite a while that it was gonna introduce some sort of in-between model. Everybody argued over, oh, is it gonna be a Celica or is it gonna be a bring back of the MR2? But between the economy and the redundancy of another front engine model, something like a Celica, you know, that would eat sales of the 86. So don't be surprised if that third Toyota sports car doesn't materialize. That could leave the door wide open for a higher performance 86. Now, whether that means a turbo model or some high-tech hybrid all-wheel drive version with an electric motor on each front wheel, who knows? If they did the latter, they could call it the All-Track or the GT4, you know, like as a nod to those cool old Celicas that broke every rule in the rallying rule book in the 90s. But for all the 86's flaws today, I actually really still like it as a sports car. As for buying one, I'm not sure the time is right given how close we are to the next one. So if you can't tell, I'm actually still pretty excited about the next 86. Because, you know, for all the current model's flaws, I still really like it as a sports car. I just think that with how close the next one's supposed to be, the timing to buy one isn't quite right. And that means people will miss out on this Hakone Edition's phenomenal green paint. I really love it. But truth be told, it may be worth missing out on this model just to have the torque the 86 so desperately needs. It's certainly worth missing the Alcantara all over the inside of this thing. Ugh. Stuff always looks dirty to me. I don't know why car companies treat it like a premium option. Get it out! And actually, speaking of out, I'm out too. Catch you next month on Drive Mode Show with another new car. This next one's at the start of its life. It's going to be an interesting talk when we get to have a look at that about this time next month. I'll leave you guessing as to what that'll be. Take care, and auf Wiedersehen.